Hello and welcome to this, the fourth of 4 video lectures about the human value of liberty. It is called Progress and Tolerance and explores the question, how do we expand liberty? A mind is unique in its mix of what is inherited, preloaded and learned, hence complex. We are each unique because of the sheer complexity of our minds. It's rational for us to want to simplify, to seek commonalities and group together aspects of personality. We need shortcut, rule of thumb ways of trying to understand people. Many psychologists use the Big 5 aspects scale, the 5 aspects being openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. By assessing our answers to questions about each of these aspects, they can come up with a description that helps us understand ourselves and others better. The Big 5 aspects and similar psychometric tests help us deal with the complexity of minds. And it is a fact that we each have internal constraints on our scope of action. We can think of these as 3 types of internal constraint. There are hard constraints, things about which we can do little ourselves. Severe blindness is a very hard constraint. Less severe would be poor night vision, but still a hard constraint on our scope of action. It's no good planning to be a professional basketball player if you're 5 foot 6 inches tall. There are softer constraints about which we might be able to do something. A tendency to depression or addiction would be 2 examples. And by do something here, we mean there may be programs, including medical treatment, available that can help. Then there are other limitations we can improve through self-awareness, personal development, and self-mastery. Things like ignorance, we can educate ourselves or get an education. Absence of purpose, we can look hard and try and find a purpose for our lives. Antisocial behavior, we can behave better. Insufficient determination, we can seek out and hopefully find the grit we need to get through life. Even lack of courage is something that people can develop themselves and develop courage. We might seek help and support from family, friends, a faith group, teachers, training and career development at work, a self-help course or book. For example, 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. With individual consciousness and free will comes personal responsibility and self-development. With knowledge about ourselves and purpose, we each have the capacity to improve ourselves to some extent. But we are also social animals, unable to flourish outside society. Ask prisoners who've been taken out of society, or someone who has been called out and is being shunned by former friends. Ask them about life outside their societies. We need others because we are a social animal. To further illustrate the point, consider someone who has been imprisoned and commits another crime whilst in prison. What further punishments can you inflict short of torture or death? Solitary confinement is a severe punishment because it denies us the opportunity to interact with others, something that is a basic human need. With minds of our own, but needing society to flourish, our first call on society is liberty. The fundamental concept in the rest of this series is this. Because we are individually conscious with free will and minds of our own, individual liberty is the core human value. So we live in societies, and living in a society and an individual will never be absolutely free. Maybe the absolute rulers in agricultural civilizations come closest, but that's not you and me. So we need to think in terms of how much liberty does a particular society facilitate. Societies can be described by how much they've expanded liberty so individuals can flourish. A way to consider liberty within society comes from a 20th century philosopher, Isaiah Berlin. He provided two ways to think about liberty in society. There's positive liberty, the capacity to act upon one's own free will. An example, tax and redistribution levels in society are more of a positive freedom issue, positive liberty, because they reduce or enhance our wealth and hence reduce or enhance our capacity to act on our own free will. A tax takes wealth away from somebody, reducing their capacity to act, but redistribution, a transfer to somebody, welfare payment or whatever, increases their wealth, increases their capacity to act on their own free will. That's a positive, tax and redistribution is a positive liberty issue. And then Isaiah Berlin explained that there's negative liberty, the freedom from external restraint on one's actions. As an example, free speech is more a negative liberty issue because its absence is an external restraint on my ability to act as my own conscience dictates. If I am restrained in free speech, I am restrained from speaking in a way that my conscience dictates. That is a negative liberty issue. Berlin's terms, Isaiah Berlin's terms, the positive and negative, are philosophical terms that can be a bit clumsy to use, but they describe a powerful idea that there are two aspects of liberty. We can improve on the wording by using the words progress and tolerance while retaining his key insight. Here's a model based on Berlin's insight. Society expands liberty through progress and tolerance. Progress is about increasing the capacity to act. That's increasing knowledge, increasing wealth, and increasing health. That's progress. Tolerance is about removing external constraints, having freedom of conscience, freedom of enterprise, freedom of choice. That's tolerance. Society expands the core human value of liberty through progress and tolerance. Now let's look closer at progress and tolerance. First, progress. Different levels of progress, that's social development, mean different capacities to act upon our own free will. By capacity, we mean knowledge, wealth, health. Some examples. Not having access to the internet reduces your capacity to access job sites. That's knowledge. Increased knowledge or increased access to knowledge increases our ability to act. Not being able to afford a bus ticket reduces your capacity to visit friends. It's about wealth. Of the three, this is most obvious. Increased wealth increases our ability to act. Having a broken leg reduces your capacity to play tennis. It's a health. Health is perhaps the most fundamental. Without good health, our ability to act is diminished. This idea of social development and the aggregate meaning total, the aggregate capacity to act of society, this is well established. The UN Human Development Index takes education, that's knowledge, real wages, that's wealth, and life expectancy, that's health, And that's an attempt to measure the aggregate capacity to act of a society, or the social development of that society, the level of social development. Progress and the level of social development can be seen as we move from a lower level of social development to a higher level, and that we call progress. Of course, for any one individual, capacity to act for them as an individual is a function of that individual's own capabilities and circumstances, the level of social development of the society in which they live, and the share of that society's resources that the individual can call upon. We will look further at share of resources in the 4th video lecture on the human value of tolerance, called Inequality. For humanity as a whole, the baseline from which we can measure progress is extreme poverty. The physical universe and Mother Nature treat conscious beings like any other animal. It's nothing personal, just no special favors. So if we want to improve the human condition, it's down to us. We can view progress as humanity moving ever further away from the extreme poverty of nature into which we became conscious. Progress means society's development of knowledge, wealth, and health. On to tolerance. When we talk about the level of tolerance in a society, we are describing the level of societal restraints, external restraints. External meaning outside me, restraints on me, that restrict an individual's ability to act on their own free will. External restraints most obviously means chains. Liberty requires the absence of chains, stating the obvious. But it also means freedom, freedom of conscience, enterprise, and choice. It's worth taking a moment to distinguish between external and internal restraints on my ability to act on my own free will. External constraints are those imposed on me by the society I live in. Again, most obviously chains. Internal restraints are those imposed on me by who I am. That unique mix of genes, circumstances, and experiences that is me. I was not smart enough to be an astrophysicist. You have to be super smart to understand supersymmetry. So I didn't get to spend my life hanging out with geeks. Shame. I was not skillful enough to be a professional soccer player. Never had the ball skills, speed, strength, tactical awareness. So I didn't get to be a multimillionaire. A real shame. Those were internal restraints on my capacity to act. The thing about external restraints is that they are imposed by society and so can be removed by that society. And the more societal restraints that are removed, we can say the more tolerant that society is. But to repeat an earlier point, absolute freedom in a society is not possible. So tolerance requires mutual restraint. And there's more on that in the 1st video lecture on tolerance, called Rule of Law. With the absence of chains, we can see tolerance as 3 freedoms: conscience, enterprise, and choice. Freedom of conscience, the freedom to believe what we feel and to say what we think without external restraint, indoctrination, and censorship. In terms of mutual restraint, you respect my right to worship God or not as I please, and I'll respect your right. Freedom of enterprise, the freedom to act with our own labor, intellect, and capital within the law, without external restraint. Importantly, that includes the theft of our own private property. In terms of mutual restraint, I leave your stuff alone, you leave my stuff alone. Freedom of choice, to make our own decisions about our own lives. Of course, taking individual responsibility for those choices, but without external restraint, like laws forbidding homosexual relationships. That's an external constraint imposed by society on people's freedom of choice, freedom of who to be with. In terms of mutual restraint, you drink, smoke, pop, and do what you want. I'll do the same, as long as no harm is done to others. Tolerance means mutual restraint. Intolerance means one dominant group restraining another. The baseline from which we can measure tolerance is the formalized tribalism of agricultural civilizations and the conquest, colonialism, and slavery that tribalism fosters. We can view tolerance as humanity step by step disinheriting ourselves from the limitations of the tribalism of our ancestors. Tolerance means mutual restraint in society, with the freedom of conscience, enterprise, and choice. To sum up on the human value of liberty, miraculously, we humans came into being as individually conscious. Self-evidently, we are not the subject of fate, determinism. We have free will. We exercise our free will with minds of our own, reasoning with our feelings and thoughts. This is a summary of the previous 3 video lectures on liberty. As Jordan Peterson puts it, we are sovereign, responsible individuals. Sovereign, responsible individuals need individual liberty. But we are also social animals. We live in societies. We can describe our societies by the extent they have expanded the core human value of liberty with progress, increasing knowledge, wealth, health, humanity moving ever further away from the extreme poverty of nature into which we became conscious, and tolerance, freedom of conscience, enterprise, and choice, as step by step we disinherit ourselves from the limitations of the tribalism of our ancestors. Liberty is the core human value. To reject it is to reject our human nature. And liberty is expanded along 2 separate axes, progress and tolerance. Thank you for watching. The next in the series, Understanding Ourselves Through Our Human Values, is the first of 4 video lectures about the human value of progress. It is called Geographical Luck and explores the question, how and where did agricultural civilizations develop? It can be found at www.conservatus.com, where there's reasoning that resonates. Conservatus, keep safe, intact, save from danger, our human values.